All of us were already aware that the priority theme for this year's CSW is about challenges and opportunities in achieving gender equality and the empowerment of rural women and girls is without doubt befitting, particularly within the dispensation of the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development. For people, planet, prosperity, and in partnership, and in which promises to leave no one behind. Sadly, women, and indeed those living in the rural areas of Africa, continue to face multiple and intersecting forms of injustices and discrimination. From land grabbing to impacts of climate change, to early and forced marriages, to the inability to access comprehensive sexual and reproductive health rights, information and services. As such, the urgency and effective participation and contribution by African women's rights organizations before, during, and after global meetings such as the CSW is very critical. Over the last 30 years, FemNet has continued to play a significant and proactive role in not only raising the visibility of African women's rights at regional level, global platforms, but more so in mobilizing and ensuring that women and girls are actually present in these corridors where decisions are made and that their voices, concerns, and priorities are captured and contribute to the shaping the decisions of the annual CSWs. The principal output of the CSW is the agreed conclusions, which contains an analysis of the priority theme and a set of concrete recommendations for governments, intergovernmental bodies, and other institutions, civil society actors, and other relevant stakeholders to be implemented at the international, regional, national, and local levels. Notably, there have been a few years when governments have failed to reach a consensus and therefore having no agreed conclusions on the priority themes of the years 2000 to 2005, 2010, 2012, and 2015. 2012 was particularly disappointing not to have agreed conclusions since the priority theme was very close to the theme this year. That is the empowerment of rural women and their role in poverty and hunger, eradication, development, and current challenges. Ladies and gentlemen, as African women, we must ensure that history does not repeat itself. We must intensify our advocacy and lobby efforts, working closely with all stakeholders to ensure that there will be agreed conclusions at the CSW 62 in March 2018. And this two-day pre-CSW 62 regional strategic meeting is one way of galvanizing our advocacy efforts and strategies as we collectively develop concise policy asks and recommendations for African governments and development partners that are grounded on lived realities of rural women and girls.
There has never been a time in history as this time, this year, for Africa and African women to show leadership in ensuring that we have consensus around the theme of rural women and girls. We have seen a change. There's a change in the face of rural women over the past decade. We're seeing more entrepreneurs, global awards entrepreneurs coming from the rural areas. We have seen thought leadership coming from the rural areas. We have seen development trailblazers. But we cannot deny that we still have a very large number of rural women and girls who still face multiple and intersecting inequalities and painful forms of discrimination. They lag furthest behind on every gender and development indicator that there is. Gender and geographic inequalities mean that rural women and girls are disproportionately affected by poverty. They have unequal access to land and natural resources, infrastructure and services, decent work and social protection, and they suffer the effects of environmental and climate change. Being part of the civil society, therefore, we really rely on you to capture and share this knowledge that would help us at global level to set the agenda and transform the landscape for rural women and girls. The realization of the SDG goal of leaving no one behind means that we must substantively engage, with facts and figures, with new knowledge. We must forge new partnerships, especially with the media, to send our message across. Social media is powerful. We must not forget the role in highlighting the plight of the rural women and girls, as well as the efforts actually being made to empower and uplift their lives and ensure global engagement and interest in realizing the opportunities, but also the gaps that exist in the lives of rural women. It is our hope as UN Women that to ensure the use of this space most effectively, and we stand engaged.
Women form more than half the world, and rural women and girls are the majority of that. What is the reality today? Rural and urban divides have eroded. Who is a rural woman today? A rural woman today is certainly an agricultural worker. She's a fisher person, she's a farmer, she's an entrepreneur, she is a community leader, she is a caregiver, she fetches water, she maintains her family, she stands for political office, she's working in her community. She is a leader. What we have seen is, over these years, resilience, her courage, her leadership, her innovation. What we have not seen is the infrastructure that supports all of this. And what we have not seen are barriers being removed for her leadership, her innovation to be fulfilled. This is what we want CSW to look at. We do not want CSW to be looking at anodyne averages. We want CSW to look beyond the averages to actually who is being left behind. You know, the leave no one behind aspiration of the SDGs has a real opportunity to be addressed in its fundamental sense, because leave no one behind is a fundamentally human rights-based approach.
The issue of gender equality, can you believe? How many years have we agreed that gender equality is an important issue, it's a goal in its own, it's a means to achieving other development goals, but yet when we go to New York and start negotiating issues affecting women, gender equality becomes controversial. And so governments preferred to hear gender equity, but not gender equality. So you can see the backlash and how we are going backwards. There was also controversial views on family planning and contraceptions. Again, we have Holy See that has a permanent seat in the CSW negotiation at the UN. So you can imagine they start that, controversial views about what family planning is, again informed by, either religious fundamentalism or based on what people call moral values. And again, it takes us backwards because we know that we have already been discussing issues of family planning and contraceptions And African women and women in other regions need contraceptive, they need family planning. It has been agreed upon in ICPD, but still when we go to CSW, it becomes controversial. The other issue was around stating that women of all ages, like saying women of all age, their rights should be respected. So just making that reference was controversial, mainly saying that it implies that girls have a right to sexual rights and to have sex when they are still children. So again, to understand CSW negotiations, language is extremely key. The word that you might think is extremely simple, well understood, is obvious, is going to be understood by another delegate completely in a different way. The final one was around marital status. Again, the governments could not agree that women of all marital status, women of different marital status deserve the same equal rights, whereby references were made that, married women deserve these rights, unmarried women deserve these rights. So the marital status was a critical issue during the CSW 56 in 2012. So those are what I have, and if people were in this room were at CSW 56 in 2012, and remember some of the issues that were controversial, please feel free to add to this list, because we need to be aware of those issues so that we know whether those same issues will come from and draw lessons that we can use when we go into this CSW.
One of the things, the next steps, is to make sure we also have national level advocacy. So we had the Rural Women's Assemblies, but we also had some civil society organizations in some countries which contributed to the country positions. So it shouldn't stop. We have about 2 weeks to continue. So it's also taking what has come out of this meeting to say this is the regional position. We may have a country position. How do we strengthen what is in our country position with the regional position? And how do we alert our national governments, our national delegations on what we have discussed at a regional level? So please share with us anything that you're doing at national level. I think one of the things we need to start doing on our continent is documenting our steps, documenting our footprints. We are believing that we will get an agreed conclusion, but we need to document what it took. We must have that solidarity as Africans. Get warm clothes, make sure you see your sister walking along Second Avenue, make sure you ask. We are Africans, we are so distinct in that, and it's our space, and CSW 62 is ours, we own it. So let's make sure we are supporting each other.